Welcome to The Ripple Within, a podcast by All in One Life Coaching. I'm Michelle, a certified life coach specializing in mindset, emotional wellness, and the law of attraction. I work with people to help create the narrative around their desired outcome.
And I'm Kathy. I'm here to ask the questions, explore the patterns, and share the real life moments that make this all, well, make sense.
This podcast is about the connection between how we feel and the physical reality we experience every day. We'll explore how our thoughts lead to outcomes and how narrative shifts can create big change.
We'll keep it grounded using logic and lived experience, not just theory. And if you've ever wondered why you feel stuck, reactive, or out of sync with yourself, you're not alone.
Our life experience will always match how we feel. This podcast is about exploring our ripple within, how our thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and values contribute to the physical life we live. Let's get into it. Welcome back, everyone. All right, Kathy, what have you got for us today?
I think a topic that's very relevant in the current environment: getting offended on someone else's behalf.
Getting offended on somebody else's behalf. That's a big topic, and lots of us do it. Is there something that we can provide a little context around it, or do you have an example, something you've experienced?
Uh, I think so. We have a lot of meetings, and it's not just meetings, but even watching the news, even chatting with friends, even inviting new people maybe into your friend group. Someone can say something that to someone else, maybe your friend, maybe your partner, maybe who knows who, that kind of makes you go, "Huh?" And you can perceive as offensive on somebody else's behalf. That's not cool. What would make you say something like that? Any of the above. In this world currently, there is a lot that you can be offended by on someone else's behalf. And A, it doesn't make you feel good, but B, in the law of attraction universe, it shouldn't matter what somebody else has necessarily. It only matters what you say and your happiness and all that sort of stuff.
And how we respond to it? Yeah.
Right? So it makes it really tricky. I'm sure we've all been in, friends groups, in whatever environment you're in, whether you're, at a bar or a restaurant, or maybe you're playing ball, you're on a ball diamond, you're in a ball tournament.
Yeah.
Somebody can say something that makes you go, "You probably shouldn't have said that to my friend," or whatever, right? And then automatically you're, I don't want to say defensive, because maybe it puts you on the offense rather than the defense.
So let's talk about the
Yeah.
word offended first. So, and as you said, right, from a law of attraction perspective, and we talk a lot about our emotional state within that environment. So, when we're offended, what does offended even mean, right? It means that we've heard something or witnessed something that has caused a reaction within ourselves that we don't like. It's an uncomfortable feeling. I'm offended by what you said. So my feelings are hurt. I'm annoyed by it. I'm frustrated by it. Something like that is occurring. And as we talk about a lot, and you mentioned it, it's really tricky when we become offended on the behalf of somebody else. because we don't actually know what they're doing, what their perspective is, how they view it. Maybe they thought it was a joke, maybe they thought it was funny, but yet we are the one that's offended. So, and none of that makes anything right or wrong per se. It's just that while we're in offense, we're the one in the rabbit hole. So now when we conduct ourselves from the rabbit hole, so being offended, and you used a perfect word, will often cause us to become defensive. Defensive is rabbit hole. And offensive can also be rabbit hole depending on where we are on the emotional scale. So if we're annoyed by a comment and then we use words from that, I mean, first we have that feeling of, "Ugh, I didn't like that," or "I don't like that." Then, if we choose to use words in that moment, our words are going to be in the same bucket as the offense. So then what will happen is often arguments will escalate, finger pointing will become more extreme, and will continue to stay in the rabbit hole. So our goal in this experience is to spend as less time as possible in the rabbit hole, even though we're going to go there from time to time. Because again, if somebody says something offensive, we hear it, it's logical for us to have a first reaction of, "Oh, I don't like that." When you become practiced in this, you recognize pretty quickly that you have an emotional feeling based on whatever just occurred that you didn't like. And the goal, as we talk about, is what's the other end of the stick of hearing somebody say something offensive or being offended by somebody who says something. So we could stay in the rabbit hole in offense, in defense, in frustration, in annoyance. We can certainly stay there, use words that are going to be equivalent to that bucket. Or when we discover that we've heard something offensive, we can make a conscious decision now to change the subject, move in a different direction, provide support instead. So if we're offended on somebody else's behalf, we might say, "Oh, that felt awkward for me. Not sure how that felt for you, but that one felt awkward for me. So I'd like you to know that I appreciate you and everything you bring to the table."
It makes it really tricky for me sometimes,
Mhm.
being in a situation like that where somebody says something that, you know, pisses you off, and they've said it to your friend, your family, your spouse, your partner, your kid, your like whoever,
Mhm.
for you not to jump in and go, that was not cool.
Yes.
Like really not cool.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. When we respond from there, and it's tricky for us humans because we in that moment are the ones who believe it's not cool. The person who said it or did it might think it's cool. So then whose opinion do we form our behavior around, kind of thing? Whose side do we take at that point? To respond out of frustration and point out that, you were, what you said just there, like that just really wasn't cool. And that's not necessarily a wrong thing to do, but there are different ways that we can ask those types of questions. Did you mean for that to be offensive? Because it takes away some of the blame. It sets the stage for how I interpreted it. Like, did you mean for that to come across offensive? So if somebody says something offensive, instead of get going into the bucket with them, we can do a couple of things. We can say that, did you mean for that to be offensive? Or we can say, could you repeat that for me, please? And 99% of the time, when it's offensive, they're not going to repeat it. They're just not. And I would encourage all of us in practicing some of that. Had a conversation yesterday with one of the employees at our business where they were interpreting something that somebody else said, and they interpreted it as an intention of being wrong, of poking the bear, of wanting to point out the wrongness. And I had to remind that person that it's you creating that narrative right now, which is why you feel the way you feel. Again, we don't know unless that other person is like, yeah, no, my intention really was to point out that you didn't do your job. We don't really know that. So we're making it up in our head that what somebody else said, the intent behind it. And again, if somebody were to say something like y- really offensive to your face, or was picking on maybe your demographic or your orientation or something like that, then yeah, just from a moral compass, we'd be able to say, like, we're about inclusion here. So as soon as we hear something that excludes somebody, we immediately notice that, because our belief system is we love and appreciate everyone and everybody's perspectives. So it's more about when we're offended, it's really about noticing in that moment that I'm sitting in the rabbit hole. Do I want to stay in this rabbit hole, or do I want to move up the chain to no longer be in the rabbit hole and be somewhere else? And it's why I think even as children and stuff, as we were growing up, people would say, just ignore them, just ignore them. And that's easy to say and harder to put into practice, because again, you can't really ignore something and move forward. We have to go do something else. And if we hear something, so if somebody is being prejudiced or racist or behaving from that context of you don't belong here, and we hear that, and we're an earshot of it, my initial response to that might be is, you absolutely do. Pay no mind to that. You absolutely belong here, and you are definitely appreciated, at least at my level. I appreciate you being here. We're just not going to pay attention to that.
That was my follow-up question is if you're in a room of people or a group of people or wherever it is that you are, and someone offends someone that you are with, and the person that you are with also takes offense to said comment, how does one support
Yeah.
without it escalating? Because you're right, it's easy to say just ignore them, but
Yeah.
you're also in that whatever space in that moment. It's hard to go, okay, wait, where, where am I? And you hear all the time, this isn't the time or the place.
Yeah.
Really? I, I don't believe that. And I don't believe that for a second.
Yeah.
Because if you can't do it then when? I mean, if you're in the now, be in the now, right? So
Well, so what is the point of responding at all? What would be the goal in the response? What are you trying to achieve?
I maybe clarification,
For what?
accountability.
Okay.
And yes, I'm aware that's tricky to make somebody else accountable for what it is that they say or do. It's really tricky, but when it affects, see,
It's it's
I'm
it's
on the fence on that one, because if it affects my happiness and in turn affects my loved ones, whatever happiness too, it's hard to just go, just ignore it. And they know, because heard that all the time. Just ignore them. Growing, just ignore them. Even as adults, just ignore them. This isn't the time or the place. And yet the other side of me is, it's like everybody else can have no filters. Why can't I have no filters and be the bigger person? Why do I always have to be the bigger person? Like, Really? I'm not allowed to display my thoughts as well?
But that's just it. You
Yeah.
absolutely can. Every person on the planet has the right to speak their mind and has that ability to do so. The challenge is when we allow what another person does to affect how we respond, we are the ones in the rabbit hole. We are the ones that are unhappy. And the only time another human being has power over our emotions is when we let them. So if somebody says something that we become offended by, we're not saying that you shouldn't be offended. I mean, obviously, if somebody says something completely rude and outrageous, then yeah, our emotional response to that is going to be, I don't like that. And as we try to coach and encourage, is it's okay to have that emotional response. It's logical to have that emotional response. It makes sense to have that emotional response. But if we go to the same party, we are the ones that are no longer happy. And oftentimes, what'll happen, we might respond out of anger or frustration to then later in the day be like, oh, why did I even bother? Why did I get in the middle of that? And then we end up leaving, and 3 hours later, all of a sudden, we're feeling a little bit guilty about the way we now responded. Because human beings, when we separate ourselves from well being, and I mean separate ourselves, other people can, be contributors, but ultimately they don't make us do it. We do it. So when we separate from well being, we feel it immediately. So, our well, I want to clarify that just a little bit and clean it up. Somebody says something that we become offended by, all of us hears it, all of us acknowledges it. There's that part of us that is telling us that we don't like it. What well-being is doing from here now is then giving you an opportunity to do what is preferred. So when we don't like something, we now have the opportunity to do what we like. And for humans, it's really difficult sometimes to make that shift. It's easier if it was just a one off comment in a room full of people, and all of a sudden other people are laughing and we just move on from it. But if we've been playing in the rabbit hole all day, we're tired, we're hungry, we've had a customer that went sideways, we've got people demanding things from us in the background, maybe pets or children, or just stuff is like piling up, and we haven't done the work throughout the day to clean ourselves up as we're going through the process. Yeah, we hear something offensive, that could be the moment where we lose it,
Yeah.
right? Like that could be the moment where we stand up in a boardroom and call people names and yell at each other. I mean, I've been in places of business years ago where fist fights broke out in meeting rooms that you sit back and you're like, what the heck? In Las Vegas, I had two supervisors screaming at the top of their lungs at each other, and I'm in my back office, and I come out there and I'm like, what the heck? Like, stop it. There are other people here. Like, smarten up. And as I was giving them heck, I'm like, getting further and further in the rabbit hole. Like, my head's like, you guys are grown adults and you're behaving like children. And I became incredibly judgmental. And that's what's tricky about being offended. We have now become judgmental about your crappy behavior. And no human being can do that and feel good at the same time. It is not up to us to judge other people's behavior. It's not up to us to take offense on somebody else's behalf. It is up to us to be, you're your own person, you do you. What you said sounded like crap, but you do you. And then focusing on our friend or somebody at work or a family member, and reminding them how much they mean to us, reminding them that they matter in this experience, reminding them that they are included. And the more we do that, number one, the person who said the offensive thing looks like an idiot. We don't need them to be accountable. We don't need them to be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. You're right. I shouldn't have said that. And I mean, it would be great if they did, but humans be humaning again, as we like to say. And we don't know what's going on in their experience either. They could be having an absolutely miserable day as well, because as we talk about here all the time, every human being has access to this. So when they're being a jerk, they're here. And we don't know what's happened today or yesterday, if they've eaten or if they've been sleeping okay, or maybe there's some medical things that none of us know about. And in that moment, they said something crappy, and then we jumped down their throat. And frankly, what that does is it proves their point, because now we're just playing in the same bucket as you. The topic doesn't matter, it's only the bucket. Make sense?
In in those instances, we do talk sometimes about it's okay to be in the rabbit hole,
Yeah.
just don't stay there.
Yeah.
So if there is a situation like that and you find yourself insta responding and then taking a bait and maybe, de-escalating or being supportive or whatever that is in the after moments,
Yeah.
they always say that, those aren't wrong per se,
Yeah.
but maybe that's a way to ease your own emotional state in that moment.
Yeah, it's precisely how we move up the chain. So when we're in annoyance, aggravation, offense, and we recognize it really soon, that recognizing of it automatically starts moving you, because now instead of living this life just by happenstance and saying whatever we want to say and not being concerned about, and you mentioned it about, why do I always have to be the bigger person? Well, the reality is nobody does. Like, nobody has to be the bigger person. But as we say all the time, if you're not going to respond from a place of well being, then you're the one who's going to feel like crap. So you don't have to be a bigger person. But if you're expecting to have a relatively pleasing life experience, you don't really have a choice.
Like the mantra, if you're not going to say something good, don't say something at all.
It's
I
so
mean,
right, and it's so interesting that those phrases have just been around forever in a day. Sticks and stones may break my bones, words will never hurt me. Da, da,
yeah,
da, da.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of those sayings have just been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. We didn't maybe know why. We There were words we were using, but maybe no real explanation as to why that would be a good methodology to have in under your belt, is to be able to hear something crappy and you, yes, dip for that second because we know that something about that didn't feel good, and then being able to make a conscious decision to be someplace else. That's true human power over your emotional state. And there's just no human, and we'll use that loosely, like, generally, there's no person that when we can correct that path, when we can change the narrative sooner, when we can come up with something else to say over their poor behavior. And again, I would encourage, did you mean for that to be offensive? Could you repeat that? Oftentimes they won't repeat it anyway. And then we're already starting to shift, because now it's not about blame. Now it's not about judgment. Now it's about clarity and curiosity and understanding and comprehension. All of that's up here. And again, we don't know what kind of day those folks are having, right? They could have got the worst news in the morning, came into work, had to take part in a meeting. They don't want to be there. They're trying to pretend. They're trying to put on this front, and then all of a sudden they say something inappropriate, for example. We still don't know everything that goes on behind that. And the second we stop loving them, the second we stop appreciating them for being human, we are the ones that have dipped.
I've always it's always been a joke that, you know, kids I can't wait to be mature, as they say, because kids and more mature people just no filter,
No
right?
filter.
It's everything in between. So I'd like my next, moment of offense to be when I'm more mature to be able to just say what I'm thinking and call it a day. And not that it's acceptable, I guess, because there are a lot of
It depends on the
offensive,
intention.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah,
what's the
intent, yeah,
intention, right? So, children,
yeah,
especially, it is rare that a child is coming to the table with a knowing intent to say something that could be
hurt,
offensive.
yeah,
They
yeah,
don't know enough about life. They haven't experienced enough about life, right? So, their intent to be mean, for example, that's pretty depending on the age of the child, but right, but most of the time it's just they don't even know what they're saying. They say something and they don't really even comprehend what that means on in a bigger picture. So it's still again, there's nothing wrong with not having a filter. We encourage it all the time. Just if we're not going to have a filter, try to do as much of it as you can from up here. And ultimately, there's a lot of power with human beings in meeting rooms and stuff like that. We've talked about that before. Whatever energy we bring into the room can be powerful. So if somebody's having a really bad day, right, and most of the time we can see it on people, right? The energy will shift. We can feel it that something's off. Now wouldn't be the time to be poking fun at them.
I think we've all been there. Well, I know I've been there. You've been in a meeting or you've been in a, and like you say, you're having a bad day, you're not feeling well, maybe you've got some a million other thoughts in your head and you're just sad, just mad,
Yeah.
just whatever. And you're in a meeting and somebody says something that they perceive as a joke or something that's funny or something that that maybe you've done or said or whatever in the past and maybe in the right mood, yeah, you would have thought that was funny as hell too, but in this particular day you're like, shut up,
Yeah.
like what the hell are you talking,
Yeah.
just shut up, why are you bringing up shit from
Yeah.
like 10 years ago, like what's wrong with you?
Exactly.
Right, so immediately you're like, no, that's not funny, in fact that kind of pissed me off and hurt my feelings, so then I'm gonna stay in the rabbit hole longer, and you get in those meetings, somebody's like, geez, you're awfully quiet today. Yeah, because everybody just pissed me off and I
Yeah.
didn't want to talk. You know what I mean? Like I just was not in a mood to adequately express my emotional state that may or may not have anything to do with any of you,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
exactly. Exactly. And sometimes I wonder as well when it's and we do this in our household, right? As we've shared multiple times that we have an agreement in this house between Travis and I that we agree that we won't be in the bucket at the same time. So if you're having a bad day and you come home, you're going to give me a heads up. You're going to say, "Hey, it's been a day." So I know then, okay. And if I'm having a day too, because I mean, I live life and I'm human and I
Yeah.
experience that sadness that you just talked about as well. So if I'm also having a day, we know not to really communicate from a fixing things mentality. We know that now is the time to be supportive. Now is the time to provide space. Now is the time to go find a funny video. Now is the time to do something different. And for us, it really did change our life experience because there would be times Travis would come home. He might have had a rough day. I had a rough day. And now we're trying to fix stuff like chores and garbage and recycling. And before you know it, you're pointing the finger at each other, saying, like, you don't do enough around here. And it never solves anything because when we are in the rabbit hole, we're not using helpful language. When we're in the rabbit hole, we're not being supportive and considerate and compassionate. So when we can have those moments, because it is going to happen, and preparing our loved ones especially because they often get the brunt of us not feeling good, our children, our spouses, our partners, our close family members like brothers and sisters and parents, they're going to get the brunt of us not feeling good. So when we can acknowledge that, yes, we live a life experience that has access to all of it. And from time to time, we really aren't going to feel good because life is going to happen. There is going to be some disruption in our experience. But because we know that and we give ourselves a break for having a bad day, then we get to move up the chain a little bit quicker. And then we can make some decisions in a big meeting, for example, if people are comfortable, being able to say, I've had a rough day. I'm going to pay attention. I've had a rough day. Just letting everybody know without needing something in return. Because what'll be tricky for humans is leave me alone, leave me alone, leave me alone. But then if nobody comes up to say, hey, are you okay? Then we're like, nobody checks on me and nobody asks how I'm doing. And then all of a sudden, again, we're kind of playing that, we're just playing in the rabbit hole from any direction. So it's just about being able to figure out when we don't feel good and being willing to do some of that work to move up the chain even a little bit. Just like we'll go back to the offense to bring it back around. Just like that, we're not suggesting that we can hear something offensive, take a deep breath, and all of a sudden just be like in bliss. Woo, nothing. Like, we're not suggesting that. But we're saying that if we hear something offensive and we notice, we can be like, "Ooh, I caught that. I did not like that." Whether we're saying it out loud or in our heads, right? I didn't like how they responded to that. What does that mean? It means you want the opposite of what just happened. We want co cohesive relationships. We want support. We want gratitude. We want appreciation. And one of the things I challenge people with all the time is when we do witness something we don't like, we can still appreciate them. I really appreciate you pointing out to me that I didn't like that. Thank you so much. Means a lot. I mean, it'll stun them because they'll be like, what do you mean? You're happy
Yeah.
that I offended you? Well, no, I mean, I'm not happy you offended me, but I am happy that I heard that I didn't like that. So now it gives me something else that I can go discover. So it means I'm growing and learning and expanding because of your tomfoolery over there. Thank you very much.
I was just gonna say that's gonna be the hardest and the trickiest for most people is being able to hear something and rather than being reactive, which
Hmm.
all humans are really good at being reactive, instead just taking a beat, going, "Oh, I didn't like that. I didn't like that."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And we don't even have to solve it immediately either.
right.
And as we've talked about before, that prep work that we do in the mornings, right? Like we wake up, we're happy to be here. Before we get out of bed, we're telling ourselves it's going to be a good day. I'm going to take part. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to be kind. I'm going to be helpful. This is the kind of day I'm going to have. And then in the early stages, we want to do that several times a day. As when you get practiced in this and you can hear it a lot sooner, you don't have to do it as often. So, and when we do that work, there's offensive stuff happening around us nonstop.
All the time.
So when we're feeling good, we don't notice. We don't pay attention to it. We don't care. We're just like, whatever, they're doing their thing. When we notice that somebody's being an a hole, then that's our indicator that we are also playing in the bucket a little bit because we've noticed your offensive behavior.
I know for me, it's it. active listening is one of the things, and thinking before I speak, two of the things I'm currently working on to grow and learn. And to be actively listening when someone potentially says something offensive, my initial reaction is gonna have to be to, to check myself, right? So
Yeah,
it's gonna be a challenge, but learning, growing, that's what we do, right? So yeah,
100%. And
yeah.
and I'm not sure how we're doing for time, but I want to talk a little bit about that before we wind down. In your practicing, in what you're doing for yourself and in paying attention and listening and acknowledging, have you noticed, or what have you noticed has been the biggest change for you as you've started doing this? I mean, you've been with me for 8 years now, but what has been the change for you? Has life gotten easier or harder? Like, talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, with our limited time, it's easier, but I can also almost I much quicker to recognize when I'm dipping in and out of the bucket. Um, trying, I mean, not being reactive to emails when they frustrate me or irritate me. And if I am reactive, then I'm like, oh, no, no, no. Check yourself. Like, go get some tea, maybe some water, and come back, read it again, try again. Right. So I know that if I'm reactive, it's because I'm dabbling in the bucket rather than,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And I mean, so, and I know we have to close out, but one thing that's
yeah,
just so exciting about that is by you taking that minute, by you acknowledging that, okay, I've dipped here and I'm going to go over here for a minute. You change the course of your own life by doing that. Because again, when you're in the rabbit hole and you're reactive and you respond, generally they'll email back and be like, I don't know what you're asking for or what you're talking about. So then we get a little more frustrated. And then we might respond again without being clear because people in the rabbit hole aren't clear, which is logical. So now we kind of escalate and we stay there a little bit longer. Right. So then, and that's what happens because we then use language from where we are. So when we're in the rabbit hole, there's lack of clarity, there's confusion, there's frustration, there's annoyance. So our words and our energy matches that, regardless of where they are. They have more room to come to us when we're there. So then it becomes now, okay, now we're just two people fighting again. So we want to acknowledge how amazing it is and how much you change the environment for you and for others when you take that beat. You get up, you go to get your tea, you're having that self talk with yourself. And then while we're doing that, we move up the chain a little bit. And guess what happens? Clarity sets in, helpfulness sets in, asking great questions set in, getting to the solution faster sets in. So life is still lifing. 10 minutes still went by. It's just now those 10 minutes were a little more pleasing to live for everybody because now we didn't respond from frustration. So, and now we've sorted ourselves out a bit. So we're responding from kindness and helpfulness and curiosity. The person on the receiving end of that gets the benefit. We're not doing it for them. We love them so much, but they get the benefit. It's you for that 10 minutes who got to feel better. That is powerful.
goosebumps.
Me too, in a big
Any
way.
closing thoughts for our listeners on being helpful and supportive when hearing something potentially offensive on someone else's behalf?
Yeah, I would say that this life experience is about us being able to do our best to live content, happy, peaceful lives. And the way we take part our thoughts, our behaviors within it is what dictates that. So if we want to live happy, content, peaceful lives, we must have thoughts and behaviors that come from the same bucket. And it takes practice, it takes acknowledgement, it takes a willingness to be able to want to even do it. Huge, huge way to change your experience.
Yes. Every day I learn something. So learning to not be reactive is an ongoing daily process and challenge for me in a lot of areas. So I'm definitely gonna try to remember the and take a beat. It comes with practice. You're right, it comes with practice, but it it doesn't for me. It's not happening overnight. So it's a work in progress for me, sure. Get there every day, every day. Every day that we're in this life experience is a good day. So
Absolutely.
if any of our listeners have any questions or comments or topics you'd like us to tackle, please leave your comments below. Remember to like and subscribe. Until next time,
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Kathy.
thanks, Michelle.